I would firstly like to thank you. Last but not least, we have Kerry Cannell. She is a respected artist manager, company director, and lawyer with over 15 years experience in various industries, including business and law. Kerry's most profound calling brought her to Melbourne's music scene in 2019, where she has since been elected to Music Victoria Board of Directors and leading representation and development for First Nations artists in the state. Kerry is a proud Torres Strait Islander and queer woman with connections to Yuga and Europe Islands. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Carissa. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. 15 years experience makes me feel old, but I take it with pride. I'm really happy to be here on Wurundjeri country as a Torres Strait Islander woman Just want to pay my respects to the land that I work and play on. Super grateful for the people of the Kulin Nations. They've brought me so much joy by letting me live and work here. So happy to be here with all you deadly mob and looking forward to this yarn.
Thanks, Kerry. So before we go into this discussion, I just wanted to give people an overall impact of mental health in music. So one of the main factors that affect all people in music with their mental health is low or irregular income. There's fewer safety nets. The work environment can be very impactful of mental health when it comes to music. It's a very transient, job. It's a very transient job. It's sometimes short term, and the physical strain can be a lot impacting people's mental health. So this mental health impacts everybody in the music industry. And then you have our First Nations mental health. So not only do our musicians have to deal with these factors, but then we also have the factors of disempowerment that impacts our mental health, substance abuse, the loss of culture, intergenerational trauma, grief and loss, racism, social exclusion, stolen generation, incarceration, poverty, denied rights, the third world conditions that some First Nations people live in, and lack of education and work opportunities.
When it comes to social media, some negative effects include increased loneliness, which is quite interesting considering it's about coming together and creating beautiful communities. There you go. Loss of self-worth and self-esteem, which may be promoted by perceptions that others' lives are better than ours. So we often see that a lot, especially online, Instagram, all that kind of thing. It's amazing what a ring light can do. Anxiety or depression, onset of social anxiety disorder, fear of missing out, aka FOMO, which can lead to more social media usage. Sleep disruption, particularly if you use social media right before bedtime, decreased physical activity, which will affect your overall health, poor grades or work productivity and performance, reduced empathy to others, ignoring the relationships with others in real life.
Yeah, so social media and media impacts us greatly, not only as First Nations people, but people in general can be deeply impacted by what's either shared on media or either shared on social media. All these factors are there to pull out our emotions and our heartstrings. So sometimes it's very hard for us to disconnect those emotions when we see something such as people who misrepresent First Nations people and culture, and also people who get on there and are just completely misinformed about the First Nations culture in general. So that can be very impactful to our mental health and very hard for us to hear. There will always be, you know, opinions that go through our media and our social media, but sometimes we need to be able to find ways to navigate that and hopefully spread the correct information that is being shared and bring the correct representation on those sites. Over to you, Mitch.
Deli Cerisa, thank you. So I've been a fan of this queen, this matriarch, since the early stages of her career. I think when it all started to blow up and we were all sitting back going, it's only a matter of time. If Briggs doesn't reach out, I don't know what his problem is, because someone's going to do it if he doesn't snap her up already. And that's the one and only. It's the matriarch. It's Barkaa. Barkaa, thank you, sis, for giving up some of your time today. We know you're busy getting around. We know what you do. You're a woman of high demand, but you've given up some time today to yarn to us about, you know, the online realm and certainly how, I suppose, your journey's gone so far with the media in all its glory, so to speak. So I just wanted to know how you've been finding, first and foremost, navigating social media, and in particularly, navigating the social media forum in terms of, keeping your mental health on track. How's that been for you, sis?
Oh, it's hard, my brother. Like, and thanks for the big ups, big love. It's so good to yarn to you again. Especially, being able to talk about this stuff out loud, because, social media, it can really grab a hold of you and consume a lot of your time, a lot of your mental health. And though we're so, being able to reach out to people, and I think we've seen that in the pandemic, but, it really hit me when we're talking about how you feel loneliness, because even though we're getting that interaction, it's not real. Like, it's that interaction where you can't see people's expressions, or you can't feel like body language, or feel that warmth from people. And it's like we get that side of it, and then I tend to not try to not read my requests, but I'm nosy, and I like to dive in there. And as black fellas, we're going to cop racism no matter what we're doing, what we're saying. Is just seeing black fellas do good, people automatically want to knock you down and make you feel smaller than them because because of the issues that reside within them, and it can be a really dangerous place, especially if you're on there and you're making noise, and and you're speaking out and you're being proud. I think just being proud in general, or loving your culture, is a dangerous place to be on social media, because a lot of people are going to come for you. And there's I think my block list is it's massive. I really pride myself on my block list, but it's tough on there. It's really, I think you got to have breaks. Like, you always got to switch off, have that certain time. I'm bad for it. I won't switch off all the time. Sometimes I'm just glued to my phone, but I think we got to remind ourselves that we got to switch off sometimes, and I guess allocate time specifically to use social media, and then time to actually be present in the real world.
For sure. Yeah, the block list, say. It's real out here. It really is. But you're obviously very staunch in telling your truth, and obviously that truth resonates with many of us. So how do you go with, I suppose, juggling a realm that, I suppose, a lot of the negativity that comes towards you is based upon obviously being a proud black fella, proud woman, just a proud woman of color and culture, and that's obviously telling the truth of history to the present. How do you go when there is so many people out there that are misinformed, uneducated, whether it's in the media, social media? How do you go with showing up to then write another song, to then share another truth, to then share another part of who you are? How do you keep fronting up to be that voice for not only yourself but for community, and not get burnt out? Because the reality is for us, I suppose, when it comes to telling our truth, we don't really have the option to all of a sudden just write about red roses, because we're truth tellers, we're storytellers. So how do you just keep fronting up,
It's a hard one, eh? You're right. We don't have the capacity to write these sort of, I guess, mainstream bops, or this is kind of coming from our heart and what we started with. And I think when we get these people in the media, or people who go against us, it's kind of proving our point. It's proving our point that we do live in a racist country that is ignorant to First Nations issues, that turn a blind eye to systematic racism. But it's hard. I feel most of the time I'm running on empty. My cup's not always full, unless I'm doing a gig and then I'm around mob, or I'm around people who lift me up. And I think that's a beautiful thing about being a black fella in this industry, is that we got a lot of mob that hold us, and that we'll pick the bar up. When one of us are tired, another person will talk about the issue, and each and every one of us are running the ball up at different times. And and we take care of each other, we check in with each other. And I think that's a beautiful thing about it. But I've had times where I'm I don't want to do this anymore. I'm what's the point? you know, and that's when I get really down, like when my cup's really empty and I'm just like, I'm so tired. Like, I'm so tired of explaining my existence to people. Like, I've been doing this my whole life. Like, when do we stop, you know? But then I realized that, you know, yarning to my kids and they're not going through racism at school, or their childhood's a bit different. It's like, this is what we're doing. Like, we're paving a way. We're seeing First Nations voices like on the forefront. We're seeing it in media, on mainstream TV, on mainstream radio, in shopping centers. Like, we're traveling the world, like, you know, in Dubai.
Hey,
You know,
Madison Square Garden. Oh, what?
but we're just seeing mob everywhere, and I think that's the beautiful thing about it. But it's just like, you kind of, it's tiring, it's stressful at times, but just gotta breathe, like, roll with the punches.
That's it, for sure, sis. And look, I'm going to come back to you because there's so much in what you're saying. You know, and I just love that with you, you are honest and you're real and raw, because I think in conversations like this as well, that's where the real gold is, to help other people out there navigate and realize, oh, Barkaa goes through it too. Like, oh, okay, this is normal. Like, if Barkaa's going through it, wow. You know, we've got to open up and tell our truth, because, you know, like, you're in Madison Square Garden, up in billboards, you're everywhere. But it doesn't exclude you, you know. It doesn't exclude any of us, you know, when you decide to step out, tell your truth, especially if your truth is from a cultural standpoint, and from our position, it's unfortunately a given, a 100% given, that your inboxes are going to get flooded, and it's not always going to be great. You know, that's just the reality. So we're going to come back. We're going to elaborate. Thank you, my sister. But Dobby, we haven't had the chance to yard, my brother. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I haven't seen you out here achieving, having little viral moments here and there on TikTok and this and that. I've got to say, brother, I could be wrong. You might want to give me a slap for this, but there's something about your flow. I don't know. It's a little bit Slim Shady or something.
Hey,
You know, am I wrong? I don't know. Is that the thing that you just don't want to hear and I've just gone and said it? I don't know. But
no,
brother,
I love that. No, I love that. Eminem was definitely like one of my earliest influences, you know. It was like the first albums I ever bought was like Outkast, The Love Below, Speaker Box, The Far Side, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and Eminem Encore. So I was like, that's my.
Bro, I gotta say, man, I made a rookie mistake lately. I dyed my hair white, and now everyone's calling me Mitch Shady, and that wasn't a part of the plan. You know, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I've done it. Now people want to call me Mitch Shady up in here. I'm like, damn, I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe I should get some black out and fix the problem. But anyways, my brother, I want to talk to you. I've got a similar question. It's kind of similar to our matriarch Barkaa, but I really want to draw on your experience New Year's Eve. I know it involved both of you. You did an incredible performance at the Opera House. You know, it was culturally driven, truth telling, it was all of that. The interesting thing for me around the coverage you got, which I suppose they say, you know, any press is good press, but in this, it was a bit of shots fired, let's just say it. And certainly around them being a time and place to tell our truth, which really intrigues me, because it's like, well, if the truth's the truth, then there's never a wrong time to tell it, because the truth is the truth, you know? So I'm just really interested, and especially when it's very evident and clear what you and Barkaa represent as artists, and you were booked to do a job, and that wasn't to go and do a rendition of All the Single Ladies. It was to tell your truth and do your original music. So talk me through it, my brother. I want to know what happened firsthand from you. Let's go diving deep.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to talk about there. And first up, you know, big ups to Black Douglas and you know, all praise and love to him for believing in both Barkaa and I, you know, to sort of carry that message. He wanted the message to be out there. He was, you know, like all of us were thinking, okay, here's a chance where we can put up some, you know, this message of Black excellence, Black resilience, you know, because existence is resistance. And so for us to be there on a TV screen with an audience of whatever million people that watch the fireworks, that's a statement, you know. Even if we weren't speaking about what we were speaking about, it's still a statement. So, you know, it was a powerful moment. And I know Barker and we went through our emotions of like, this is really happening, you know? But gee, like, you know, can I say like, it's like how Barker starts off the verse, white Australia has a black future. And that's what we're striving towards. And that's what we're, you know, hoping a lot of non-Indigenous people are starting to realize. What happened? Well, first of all, the majority reception that I got, and I'm sure you too, sis, has like been so positive, black, white, whatever, like that, you know, it's been really, really amazing to see that solidarity and that encouragement. And it's a lot of kids are realizing like this is the truth, and truth is what we need in our country right now. And this is kind of a step towards more of that. But you know, what's this fella from Sky News sort of wanted to put his 2 cents into it, and called it the weird and work. Hey, he called us the weird and work.
The what? Sorry.
We were weird and work, right, Barker?
Because
Yeah,
I
weird
guess,
and
Dobby, I guess my question is, I guess for people out there that may have missed it, can you sort of paint the picture of what your understanding is around what the trigger was? Because was it a verse in a song? I mean, because many of us get up at these events and we're there and we're present and we're singing and we're outwardly proud blackfellas. So for a viewer out there that doesn't know what went down, what would you say was the trigger? Because for me right now, I guess, you know, in listening to you and being a potential viewer, that you performed at New Year's Eve, it was you and Barker out there celebrating Black excellence. I mean, that doesn't sound like anything too out of the woods, you know, because we see this at many of our events. So what was the trigger? What have you and Barker gone out and done, man? I want to know. What have you gone and done?
We've made him nervous. No. But like, no, here's what I will say, because I've been thinking about this since like the program came out. All of the dancers behind us, all these amazing deadly dancers, they all had the number 474 on their shirts, on their jerseys, and then a letter on each of them which spelled out the word freedom. Now, obviously, that refers to now the plus 500 Aboriginal deaths in custody since 1991 alone, that have never reached justice. You know, not one person has been convicted for these crimes. So that's first of all. But what's interesting is like what Sis and I are talking a bit about in our verses, you know, kind of ties into that, but then it talks about, you know, existence more broadly. This guy kind of went back and forth, and it's interesting, you know, that question that you have, what was the trigger? It goes back and forth to like, I don't understand why we need, what did he call it? A whole welcomes. He called it was an entire welcome the country. And then he called it a 3-minute history lesson. And then he said, I don't know what this is about. So that makes me feel like, okay, they don't really know what they're angry about. Just the mere fact that it's happening is angering people. There's nothing specifically, because if we were to talk about those numbers specifically, then we got to talk about the cases specifically. So it's easier to project like a broader anger, you know, these weird and work, this welcome to country, because it's easier to dismiss them. But if we start talking about more specifically the fights that we're talking about in our message, then they've got to own up to these truths. We've got to face these truths. So that's what I think is really powerful about what Barker and I did on that night.
For sure, brother. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, these amazing performances, if you will, have been happening since long before us. You know, we're talking about Treaty Off the India, even Midnight Oil at the Sydney Olympics, bang, sorry. There's been all these statement pieces all the way through. I guess the sad thing is here we are, New Year's Eve, right now in the present, and there's still this uneducation that's happening where we have pivotal people in the media that have a position of power and influence that are obviously still not educated to a position of real empowerment around the true history and around the true statistics, which then in turns these outbursts that are unfortunate, because I think for a lot of us out there, unfortunately, we're used to it because we're in the public, we're in social media, we've got a real understanding. But there's young people out there that aren't ready, and we're already losing so many people to suicide and mental health. And I think it's so sad that there's people getting on mainstream platforms that are in real positions of power and leadership, and are allowed to have these outbursts and still keep that position. That's the real sad thing, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming back to mental health and well-being, how does that impact you, brother? Because I think it still would have an impact. You know, you get up there, bare your heart, bare your truth, and certainly are doing it with the intent to show the world the truth, and that is we're losing people. You know, we're losing our people. You know, some of the highest rates of incarceration in the world, and constantly hearing about these deaths, and hearing about these pain, and seeing these mothers and parents and fathers on you know, NITV and whatever news platforms will have the story, just crying and sobbing, and the trauma continues, the grief continues, that cycle continues, you know. And then for you to step out with Sister Girl and bear that truth again, and to be shut down on really such a big platform, you know, what does that do to mental health?
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, like I'm sitting here talking about the praise and the solidarity that I have seen in my echo chamber. I haven't even tried to step foot outside of that circle, you know, because I know what's like, I wouldn't read the comments under that video, you know what I mean? Because
Sure.
I already know what's being said. I don't have to read it again, because it's you know, it's sadly so ubiquitous, and sometimes it feels like it's increasing, you know. And what's hard is like, yeah, just knowing that, like, when we put these songs out, like when Sis puts out a song like Our Lives Matter, or, you know, even I Can't Breathe, like in 2020, that song was, you know, it was we never that wasn't supposed to happen. It was a response piece to how we were feeling, and I just needed to really express our frustration, and Barkaa and I wanted to put that call to action and that message on that song. So it's hard kind of going back and forth between making this music and knowing exactly what it's about and still having no justice. And it makes you feel like it just makes you wonder, like, what really is the difference, and if, you know, things are contributing or if they're not. And it kind of puts you in that little spiral of like what we do as artists. And, you know, if you don't have mob to talk to bring you, to ground you, those thoughts can bounce around the walls, and it can really be detrimental. So it's like you said, Barkaa, like I fully agree with you. Sometimes it's like you just have to get off the phone. You know, you got to put that phone away, because it does too much damage from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, brother. I appreciate you sharing. And I'll definitely come back to you in a sec, but I just really wanted to, you know, let our viewers get their head around, I suppose, what you and Barkaa put out to the world, and what was sort of reciprocated on a mainstream platform, you know, and how that, you know, this is still happening right now in the present, because I think a lot of people carry the mentality of get over it, it's been and it's gone. But the reality is that it's right here and it's in the present, and we're actually living it in the now, you know. And I often say that just as for an example's sake, you know, a lot of our parents in my generation, when they were born, weren't considered flora and fauna. And a lot of people my age still haven't had kids yet. So that means when they do have those children, which aren't even yet, their grandparents would have not been considered human beings when they were born. So there's a whole cluster, hundreds, thousands of babies to come yet that is their direct grandparent, and they will feel that, you know. And it's up to us to come together and have these open conversations so we can help them heal as well when they come into the reality of their own truth, you know, of their own close family members. These things are happening, they're present, and it's not to point the finger. We want to have these open conversations here, yarning strong, to bring about change, to bring about education, truth, but to also bring about togetherness and solidarity so we can walk together and we can create change, you know, and we have to have these conversations, and certainly around protecting mental health, looking after our mental health and well-being, because social media, it's only growing, it's only getting larger, and we're all getting pushed down the funnel of putting our faces on it, you know, so it is what it is. Now, Kerry, it's so good to have you here. I mean, you said before you're not an artist and all the rest of it, but your contribution is absolutely incredible. You're a manager to an incredible First Nations artist. You have your own consultancy business to help First Nations, BIPOC women and queer organisations form a structure that allows unique business owners to thrive within a model that works for them. I mean, that in itself is absolutely phenomenal work. So thank you so much for giving up some of your time to be in the present moment with us today. With that said, I would like to fire a question at you, if that's all right, please.
Go for it.
How can misrepresentation and people being misinformed impact on the work you do from a mental health point of view? Part 2 of that question, how does that impact each person you work with?
Well, it's such a huge question. I've been pondering on it for a couple of days, because in my work, as you've explained it, thank you for the good summary of what I do. I work in a lot of different spaces with a lot of different mob, and across various different industries or creative industries. So the way people express themselves to me is really vulnerable, because they come to me for support to learn how to build a business that fits within their values. So in order to get that deep in business, they really have to share with me the experiences that they've had in the past in doing their business. You know, I look at Deadly Musos, like the ones here with us today, as entrepreneurs, like you might be own CEOs, business owners, like that for me. Yeah, that's, I look at it from that perspective. A lot of people come to me when they just think, oh, you know, I'm just a singer, or I'm just a painter, or I'm just, you know, a weaver. Like there's no just in that. And for me, when I think about my own mental health, I find it really hard to see people so disempowered. And it's the passion in my work is to see the transition from being so vulnerable and so disempowered by how they think they should be in their music or in their business, in these spaces on social media. Social media is it can be so powerful in business, especially in this COVID world, but it has become such a driver for isolation and loneliness, like we said at the beginning. And in business, everyone thinks that's the only way I'm going to make money, or in music. And I'm trying really hard to be optimistic, but truth is, I'm running out of ideas. Like, the way COVID just keeps smashing us, and the way the media keeps putting us down, and there's a lot of work that I still have passion to do, but I need to take time to breathe as well. Like Sis and Brother Boy said, just checking out. I choose to work less of a week. Just little things like that. Speak to my ancestors because I'm so far away from home. I speak to my old people. And it does work, but it's not the, it's really hard when you're in a support role and supporting artists and seeing them cop it. Like you mob, like I was watching your New Year's Eve video back before we jumped on this call, and the show was so deadly. And then to read those articles, you know, like it just, as an artist music manager, I'm just like, oh, like, yes, I'm glad that you're stirring shit up, like do it again, you know, but at the same time, I can appreciate how hard it would be on your own well-being to cop that. So part 2 of the question, what was that? I kind of answered it at 2 and 1, I think, but yeah, typical Kerry just go on a big tangent.
That was a great tangent. It was full of gold. But I do have a question because of that amazing tangent. And that is, you know, as a proud First Nations woman and obviously managing an incredible First Nations artist, you know, it's, I guess from your perspective, like you could really take on a lot as well, because, you know, you're a proud First Nations woman and you're so invested in the growth and the success of your artist who is also First Nation. So, I mean, when they come up against what we're talking about, social media, online, the media, all these things, and that happens, and then you see them go through that roller coaster and you're so invested in them and their success and their well-being, how does that impact you and your mental health? And how do you navigate that or implement strategies to ensure, you know, your health and your mental health? Because it's really hard, I suppose, because you're seeing it and it'd be so hard to disconnect from it because you too are a proud First Nations woman. So how do you navigate that space?
Yeah, I built a good team around all of us. So I manage Alice Sky and then my brother Kerry Cannell, and so they each have different needs as, you know, as women and men, and as an Islander and Aboriginal woman, you know. So they need different styles of support, and not just support like as in white fellow way support, you know, get a counsellor, but like I really like to identify who are their support people. So if I can't be that person for them in a particular moment, then I can go to their crew and be like, hey, you know, Kiwat really needs some support this week. I'm out. I need a day. Can you please help? So for me, it's about sharing that load. And I've got some amazing crew on my team as a Black businesswoman myself. You know, I do have counsellors. I do have really strong friends that I go to for different things, and my brother as well, my family, my parents. But yeah, the strategies change depending on what's happening at the time as well. I need to plan ahead 3 months with my work so I don't overcommit. And I don't give too much of myself. Like, I'm sure everyone here in this room can appreciate how hard it can be to balance giving to people you care about, but then giving to yourself. So I'm still trying to strike the right balance. So I need to plan ahead for 3 months. And then if I need to change it up, then I can change it up. So, but yeah, and I try to have a bit of fun too. My family always say, like, don't feel guilty just for having a bit of fun. Because I'm always, you know, on the clock, working hard, looking after other people. So that's another coping strategy, is make sure I get to salt water, make sure I have some time to kick back with wine and good people and good food. But yeah, everyone's got something different. Hope that answered your question.
No, I think it did. I mean, how good's salt water? It's so healing.
Oh God,
I'm a freshwater guy, but I love getting in the ocean and the water. And I think, you know, a massive strategy is finding ways to connect to country. And even if you're off country, finding those things, resources that you can draw on to just top up your spirit and look after yourself 100%. So thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Barkaa, we're back. It's not done, my sister. I've got more. So you've shared a lot. You shared a lot in our last yarn there. And I feel like it lends itself to now about more around strategy. And I'm really interested to know this one, because you said before that you find yourself a lot running on empty or not having that cup as full as it should be. So this is a question for you, and it's not to put you in a corner, just your honest answer as usual is great. And that is, you know, how can we or anyone out there navigate this space, being the online realm and, you know, the media and misrepresentation and all of these things, to protect our mental health? What are some strategies that you use when it comes to this?
I have strategies, and then I'll feed trolls. I'll be like, oh, you know what? But yeah, don't feed the trolls. Like, if somebody's coming at you, they got time. You can't argue with somebody who's better at arguing or like better at being stupid. So it's like, you know, don't feed the trolls. Don't read the comments. Like, stay in. It's okay to have an echo chamber online. It's okay to have a safe space. You know, you don't have to feel pressured into, oh, you don't let anybody have their opinion on your page. Like, you know, they're not going to say it to your face. you know, like these racists aren't going to come up to you and be like, yeah, well, you know, this is how it makes me feel about you being proud. They're not going to say that to you. So there's no need to have them in your safe spaces online. And I think create that, have mob on there, you know, who, when you jump online, that you're filled with praise, that you're filled with mob who uplift you, that you're not going on there and you're stressed out. But it's a hard one to navigate, like, because social media is just like, because it's in our hand and we're constantly like, it's just there. And, you know, we end up scrolling, and sometimes we'll scroll onto something like that's pretty, like, especially during Invasion Day, like there was this horrendous video going around that was quite triggering. And, you know, I remember I had to jump off because I'm just like, I think like Dobby touched on it, like, you know, you feel like you get onto those sites and then you're like, is it getting any better? Like, or is it doubling up? Like, is it getting bigger? But I think, yeah, make sure your spaces on there are safe spaces. Reach out to mob. Don't be ashamed to be like, hey, I'm not feeling too good. Like, I think Support Act's great as well. You know, for our mental health, that we have something there for us that we can reach, you know, an organisation there that's specifically for artists with mental health. You know, reach out to mob, say that you're not feeling too good. Don't be like afraid to say no. You know, if you're not feeling up to it, you don't have to do it. You come first every single time. Yeah.
Great advice. I just love that. The hardest thing though, and how do you go though? Do you honestly not read your comments or like your inbox? Because I mean, sometimes that's where we get our work. Yeah. So how do you juggle that? How do you juggle it? Because I know I went through a phase where I just bailed out on the inbox. I was like, you know what, I'm done with you. But then I went back to it later and there was all these opportunities that I'd missed because I sort of bowed out, you know, and then I tried to have other people look at it, but it was like, I don't really want other people responding on my behalf because that's even more disconnected. And I want people that take the time to give me love to get that in return. But how do we do it and find that balance? Because they're going to be in there, you know? So how do you navigate that?
It's a hard one. I feel like as soon as I see it, I'm just like swipe. Like, I think that's a beautiful thing about deleting on Instagram is that you can just swipe. I think Twitter is a place where I'm just like, this is gross. You can't delete anything. Like once they, you know, it's like, it's out and I'm like, I don't know this platform. I don't like it. I'm just not going to say anything on here because, yeah, Twitter's just toxic. Same as Facebook. I find Facebook to be quite toxic, but they're monitoring things on there more. Like even me, I'm banned at the moment on there, but it's like, you know, I feel like with Instagram, you can just swipe it. Just like as soon as you see it, just delete it. Like, you know, sometimes you want to read it, but they sound like broken records after a while. It's the same thing that they've been calling our grandmothers, our grandfathers, you know, our mothers, our fathers. Like it's the same thing that they've been calling us since we're growing up, you know, these same derogatory terms, you know, telling us to get over it, telling us that it's 300 years ago, you know, and we're seeing those same things. So it's like, what are we going to get from it if we read it? So yeah, just swipe it. I just get on there and I'm just like, delete, just get out of here, get out of my face. Yeah.
And do you feel like it's becoming more like water off a duck's back for you rather than actually penetrating and affecting your mental health? Do you feel like you're starting to really implement, I suppose, everything you're saying, and that is, you know, this is the same old, just swipe and move on? Or do you feel like you do have those days where that one comment does niggle its way in? And when it does, how do you get over it quickly, if you can, that is, you know?
Oh, it's hard, I guess, because there's some things where people will troll you in different ways where they won't be straight up racist, but they'll say really weird things to you. And then you're like, oh, I got a chance to educate this person. And then it turns into this frustrating conversation. But it's like, how did this happen? It's like, it's a juggling act. Like, I feel like with black fellas, we do have this tough skin where we've grown up and we've kind of copped racism. Well, we've copped racism. So it's like, you know, it's it's like water off a duck's back, but it's not to say that it doesn't hurt. Like, it still hurts.
Yeah.
It's still really upsetting, like, to get messages just hating you for what you're doing. And I mean, I guess there's going to be, like, you know, I guess it's just ratio though, like how many people are loving you and lifting you up to how many people are bringing you down. And that's the thing that you got to focus on the most is, like, you know, are your family proud of you? Are your kids proud of you? Are you doing your mom proud? You know, what are you giving to your sister girls or your, you know, brother boys that are making them feel whole? Like, what, you know, that's the biggest payment of all. And I think that kind of, when you focus on that stuff, like, that negativity kind of just gets more quiet and more quiet. But it's not to say it doesn't rub you the wrong way. And sometimes when my mental health's bad, I'll get in there and argue with them. But it's just like, what am I doing? But they want that.
Beg your pardon?
They want that. They want you to argue back. Yeah. So, yeah.
You want me to fight?
I'm ready for you.
I love what you said though, you know, because it was set up front of the conversation about how social media can drive it in a way where you become so detached from the physical that all random that comes through and drops that one liner of negativity, you don't know them, you'll never know them, they've moved on to the next person, but their opinion all of a sudden means more than your own mob right sitting in front of you that are so proud that you're doing so much good for. It's funny how, you know, the way social media is being driven to us, that random people that come through at times, their opinion all of a sudden can outweigh those that matter the most to us. Isn't that crazy? That stronghold that this online world can have over us. And I think that's why these combos are great, because we've got to bring it back into the reality. And the reality is in the flesh, in the physical. There's so many people like our ancestors and those that have come before us into the now that are just so proud and so full of love for what we're setting out to achieve on any level. You know, it doesn't have to be on stage, just in life, you know. So no, I think that was deadly what you said, sis, about, you know, bringing it back to your mum, your daughters, your sons, your mob, you know, the people in the flesh that when you come home every day, greet you with a smile and a hug and say goodnight and I love you, you know, the ones that we actually know. But yeah, thanks for that. Dobby, I'm back to you, brother. Let's go. It's Mitch Shady to Australians Eminem. Let's get it. All right. Chuck that mic on. Let's go. Dobby, I got a similar question for you, my brother. And that is, you know, same thing. What are some things that you do to protect your mental health when navigating these spaces? And I'd like it, if you can, to add on to that with some advice to, you know, the outsiders that are looking to support First Nations music and how they can do that. And I suppose aid our mental health and, you know, all that kind of thing, if you don't mind, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I'd like everything you were saying, Barkaa, is like, so I just agree with 100%, you know, don't feed the trolls, you know, don't read the comments. A lot of the time when I do read that stuff, I just like, I read the start of it and then I just delete it. Be like, you know, oh, but how about 300 years? No. Oh, but you're not reading, no, not reading that. Not today. I'm having a good day, not a bad day, you know? But you know, I've gotten myself into, especially in 2020, just thinking that I could try and entertain or educate, you know, fellas in my, you know, DMs or whatever that are like, just have so much hate and so much ignorance, and it's like such a joke to them, and I'm there trying to tell them like, no, but like this is what we're dealing with. And I remember this one person I was talking to for probably weeks, the one person thinking I could probably like change that person's mind. Never happened, and it got way too much, and it was just vile, you know. That's not how I need to use my energy. It's too draining that way, because there's no return. And they say, you know, you can change the whole world with one person, but it's not that person, you know. It's not like, there's other ways.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And actually this is like a little bit of a comparison that kind of I think about a lot. It's a really good podcast called Conversations with People Who Hate Me. And it's just something I want to mention here because I think it's something to keep in mind. It's this I think American or Canadian dude, Dylan Marin, and he's a queer comedian and podcaster, and he gets a lot of hate, right? He did like all of these, the worst things you could imagine in the comment section. And his podcast is he gets online with them to talk. This is back in the day, like on Skype, and he'd just have a conversation with that person and say like, why do you hate me? Like, why did you call me that or this? And every conversation so far has been like, they ended with, well, do you hate me? And the person says, oh no, I don't, I was just drunk, or I didn't think you'd ever see my comment, so there's something about what social media does to us that de-individuates us, and it makes us feel like we're invisible and invincible and we can say what we want. Consequences is still there. I think about if we were in a circle and we were able to give each other the stink eye and we could have that sort of like community, like, do you know what I mean? Like that dynamic, you'd feel shame. You would feel embarrassed and shame to say the things that you've said. But because it's a screen, we don't. So that's kind of the blockage that we have. It's not fully there. We haven't developed something that actually like properly connects with the way we interact as human beings, So again, like my strategy is like, sometimes I just got to delete. I put the phone away, I talk to like Barkaa is saying, like I talk to mob and just like, make sure that I have like a good support system. I rely on my echo chamber. And then also to answer that other question there, bro, if you're looking to help, subscribe to, listen to First Nations artists and listen to First Nations influencers, because it doesn't hurt to have a bit of truth in your feed. It kind of balances out all that other stuff. So definitely follow us, donate, and have us in your daily conversations.
Yeah, that's a great answer, man. Love that.
Yeah.
And even just from an educational standpoint, it's imperative to have some First Nations artists in your playlist, because you know what, for the most of us, we never even had proper history lessons in school. I know I didn't, so there's generations that, didn't get told the truth. So, I mean, why not chuck some great music in your ears that's also going to educate you and just give you a different perspective, and it doesn't even have to be about education. It's just about knowing what's out there, because there's so many incredible artists out there that should have mainstream platforms, and the more people that can just get around First Nations artists, get around the amazing catalogue, the diversity out there, and just see what's happening in your own backyard, you won't regret it, because there's just so much good out there. And we are talking a lot on education, but some of the music's just incredible, feel good music, and you're doing yourself a disservice really by not having it in your playlist. That's all. So thanks, brother. I appreciate your words. I feel like you just gave us a lot of gold there. Very level-headed and beautifully said, man. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, brother.
Kerry, we're back. And we're ready for some more gold. No pressure, but there is pressure. But that's okay, because that's how diamonds are made. That's what we're looking for right now. The black diamond. So, how important is it having to correct information, or even when you are incorrect, correcting yourself? How important is that for the mental health of First Nations people? And I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, I guess it's just, how important is it to be, open and honest about not knowing, and being able to just be accountable, and even like you've put that post up and it was wrong, and now you know better. How important is it to just get back on and go, hey, you know what, blah, 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 and how do you think that could really benefit our mob and First Nations people across the country?
Yeah, definitely. That question makes me think of a deadly workshop I went to one time with Shelley Ware Media.
Yep.
extraordinaire. We all know who she is. But her words still ring in my head because she thought about it in the context. I asked the question, you know, like what happens if something goes wrong in your business or with your art online, you say something wrong, you make a mistake. And something that she said to us in that workshop was, there's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, I made a mistake, but I've grown since then. And acknowledging that if you put up a post or you have content that, you know, even content, like I talk to some of my clients, like you evolve and grow as a human, right? Like we all do. If there's a message that's out there online and it's forever, like Barkaa said around Twitter, it's there forever, you can't delete it, but you don't resonate with it anymore. Like I encourage my clients to, yeah, you know, acknowledge that. Like say, yep, I don't agree with that anymore. My thinking has evolved and grown, and this is my new position. And I feel like as a Black woman myself, my education has grown so much as well. I grew up on the mainland. My grandfather wanted us to come from the Torres Strait to the mainland to be educated and to get assimilated so we had better options. That was his preference. I wish that it wouldn't have been that way, but that's the cards that I've been dealt. So for me, I don't know everything. It's so important to my well-being and my mental health to accept that it's okay that I don't know everything. But the difference between myself and non-Indigenous people out there that don't have the correct information is that I've got the self-awareness, I've got the drive, and I've got the respect to go and ask and learn and grow. And especially because I've lived around all different country up and down the East Coast, and I wouldn't have been able to learn what I've learned without asking the mob whose land I'm on, paying respects to them, learning their ways, what's right. And I didn't launch my business and my brand until I felt comfortable to do that I'd sat and yarn with old people, that I've, you know, like that's really important to well-being. And if you're out there and you're online and it doesn't feel right, then listen to that message is there for a reason. That's your old people speaking to you and saying, just hold up a minute, just think it through. But if you don't think it through and you're angry and your mental health is not right and you do respond to the trolls and you do comment and get stuck into that argument, I feel like that's okay too. Forgive yourself tomorrow. It's fine. It's not the end of the world, you know. I do want to touch on one thing, the question around correct information for non-Indigenous people. I feel like I encourage the people that I support and work with in my network to step back from feeling like it's our responsibility to educate. It's not. I think we're past that now. Like, do it for your own soul. Like, you know, Dobby and Barkaa have expressed some days they want to, and it's that conversation they want to have. And yeah, I just feel like it is time for everybody who doesn't know enough. Instead of saying, how can I help you? So how can I help myself learn more so I can lift you, you know, like that's where I want to see us move. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's enough of a response on that. I could talk for days, but we probably don't have that much time. Brother, you're on mute there.
I was like flawless until that point. Damn it. It's all good. I'm
You
back.
still are, it's fine.
No, I love where you left it there, and that being, you know, don't ask how can I help you, how can I help myself to then uplift you. And you know, there's so many resources out there these days, and whilst I don't encourage a book over real life encounters and experiences, you know, there is so much information as a great starting point. And you know, wherever you are, wherever you're walking, you are on Blackfellow land. There's elders around, there is community around, there is people around that are happy to sit and have a yarn, you know. And you don't have to approach us for a history lesson. You can just come into a community center and have a cup of tea, you know, and a couple of biscuits and a yarn, and create relationship, because our mob love real relationship, you know, real people that want to come in and connect and have a yarn, and create a friendship that will turn into, you know, being a part of family. you know, and whilst there's been so much portrayal of us being, you know, this like here angry mob, we're actually the most inclusive, loving community that you'll ever come into, you know. So if there's one thing to do today, it's to pump up a little bit and get excited, because there's mob waiting to yarn with you, waiting to share story, truth, and laughs and laughs and laughs, you know. The best thing you can do is just to step outside of all the stigma and stereotype and open up your heart to just walk in and starting to connect, because that's what we want. Is we want real connections, we want real relationships, and we want people that want to hear our yarn and hear our stories. And you're right, sis, you know, we're in like 2022, and there's not really that much of an excuse anymore, because we're here, we're ready, we're available. You know what, there's a lot of young mob too that are pumped up and want to take you around country and have a yarn too. So you know, just get excited. That's all I have to say right now. Thanks heaps for your words, Kerry. Appreciate it. Crossing over to Cerisa right now. You've been sitting there a bit quiet. That mute button's been on a little too long, if you ask me, sis. So it's only right that, you know, we pop on over for a minute. I just want to know, for anyone out there, how can people access our helpline, and what do they need to know about it?
So Support Act does have a helpline there available for First Nations people. For those who do need to access it, you can call the number 1800 959 500 and option 3. When you call that number, you get directed to a person who's on the other end. They'll take you through a bunch of questionnaires. And then through those questionnaires, they'll fit you with the right counsellor and schedule a date in for you to be able to access a counsellor. We do have First Nations counsellors, so that option is there available for you. If they don't have any First Nations counsellors available, there are counsellors with cultural awareness training, so you can be directed to them as well. But it's very simple, very easy to set up an appointment. It's over the phone, so you don't have to go anywhere and travel anywhere. And also you get up to 12 free sessions for that one.
Deadly, sis, thank you for that. And, you know, don't be ashamed. You know, there's no need to suffer in silence if you are struggling or if you are triggered. This helpline is for you. It really is for you to just reach on out and have a yarn. You know, you don't have to feel like you're going through absolute hell to call up. You could just be having a rough day. But either which way, that helpline is there for you. And, you know, we've done our best to make it as safe and secure as possible, so you can feel ring up and feel as comfortable as you can to have a yarn. Thank you, Gubinginda, for everyone joining today. Big shout out to Barkaa, Dobby and Kerry. Really appreciate you giving up your time, and obviously our amazing Cerisa, who works so hard and tirelessly to get Yarning Strong up and going. Next time we'll be touching on finding your identity in music, which I really am looking forward to. I think it's going to be so diverse and just a really beautiful conversation, finding your identity in music. I just love that, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks again, everyone, for coming and joining in on this panel. I'd also like to thank Support Act for your support in helping me put on these conversations and supporting our First Nations mob out there and giving us a safe space. I want to give a special thanks to Mitch for hosting these sessions. Amazing host Mitch. And I'm glad I've passed that baton on to you, because you just flow so well with conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you to Troy Benjamin, who does the assets and the streaming for us for this session. And thank you to JB High Five, one of our sponsors, who are supporting us putting this all together. So thanks again.